I didn't get this video up on Sunday.
You are failing!
Hello everybody and welcome to the 1940s, a much simpler time where you had to worry about getting beat up in an alley, World War II, and flying cars. Wait a minute. People still get beat up in alleys. God, that was an awful opening. Anyway, today's movie is Captain America, the First Avenger. So I kind of lied a tiny bit when I said that The Incredible Hulk was the only Marvel movie I have not seen. I have seen this movie, but I wasn't really paying attention when I first watched it. So when I was rewatching it for the review, I remember some parts and other parts I didn't even realize were in the movie. Before we get into that plot, I want to say that I'm going to try to shorten the plot section up a bit because it's easily the longest part of the review and it's the most work that I have to put into editing. I'll try to keep all the important stuff in, but who knows if this will actually work or do anything for the review. We'll just have to see. In a small village in Norway, we see a man named Johan Schmidt, leader of a Nazi research division known as Hydra, interrogating a villager about an artifact left by the gods. Johan retrieves the artifact, known as the Tesseract, and he and Hydra destroy the village, killing everyone. In the good old US of A, we see Steve Rogers, a scrawny little man, trying to join the military. He is denied, and his best friend, who was drafted into the war, Bucky Barnes, tries to cheer him up by setting Steve up on a double date to the Stark Expo. Steve attempts to join the army again at the expo, and Dr. Abraham Erskine overhears Steve talking to Bucky about how he wants to fight because it's right. Dr. Erskine lets Steve into a special division where he'll be tested on becoming a special soldier. There, Steve meets Peggy Carter, one of the leaders of this special division. Dr. Erskine tells Steve that he worked for Hydra and that he tested an early version of a super soldier serum on Johan. It backfired and Johan became powerful and crazy. Johan and his head scientist, Dr. Zola, have created extremely powerful weapons with the power of the Tesseract. Johan finds Dr. Erskine and sends an operative to assassinate him. Steve is chosen and he is injected with the super soldier serum, and the once tiny boy becomes an absolute unit. Dr. Erskine is killed by a Hydra operative who steals the last of the serum, and after a long chase he is caught and the serum is accidentally destroyed. Steve goes around the country to promote the war, becoming Captain America. He heads off to Europe, and after finding out that Bucky and his company were captured by Hydra, he heads off to rescue them. He saves the soldiers, finds Bucky, and encounters Johan, who rips his face off to reveal that he is now Red Skull. Steve and Bucky escape with the soldiers, and Steve leads many assaults against Hydra. Steve and Peggy become close and start to develop feelings for each other. Steve's team goes to capture Dr. Zola, but Steve and Bucky are ambushed. Bucky falls off a cliff, and Steve successfully captures Zola. Zola reveals that the Red Skull plans on targeting cities all over the world to conquer it. Steve and his team travel to Hydra's headquarters and confront Red Skull and Hydra. Steve and Red Skull fly off in a plane and they fight, with Red Skull touching the Tesseract, which sends him off into what seems like space. To prevent casualties, Steve is forced to land the plane in the Arctic. He tells Peggy that he'll be fine and they'll have a chance to go dancing after he makes it back. Steve then wakes up in a S.H.I.E.L.D. building, and after escaping, Nick Fury explains that Steve has been asleep for almost 70 years. Steve remembers his promise to Peggy and is sad that he missed their date. So I thought this movie did a lot of things right. The story was very simple, like a lot of origin stories, but I think that we can look past the simple story. I mean, this is a superhero movie after all. I'm not saying that all superhero movies should have a simple story, it's just that a lot do. I think that this movie is a great starting point for Captain America. Like I said in the beginning, I half watched this movie, so I didn't really take in and appreciate it for what it was. The newer Captain America movies, I question Steve's decisions or motives. Why did he do this? Why did he do that? I'm not saying that this movie answers all those questions, but it gives you an idea of why Steve does what he does. He's a man that knows what needs to be done and actually does it. There's little to no hesitation for Steve. He is a man to look up to and admire. And Chris Evans does a good job portraying this. I mean, look at him. He has that look to him. I don't even know how to describe it. The hair, the pecs, the abs, and those arms. Oh my god, those arms. Anyways. Honestly though, I really think that Chris Evans fits the role as Steve Rogers. He has a sort of leadership and honesty and just all around good about him. It's great, but Steve is not my favorite character in the movie. I think that Stanley Tucci, sorry if I pronounced that horribly, as Dr. Abraham Erskine is fantastic. Just listen to his first line.
So, you want to go overseas? Kill some Nazis.
Excuse me?
There's something about it that just makes me immediately fall in love with this guy. This man shaped Steve to what he has become in the MCU today. Sure, Steve had some of that power in himself, but I believe that it was Dr. Erskine that is the driving force. He's the one that shows Steve that it doesn't matter what you are, but it's who you are. I love how he can just touch Steve's chest and you know what it means to him and you know what it means for Steve. He is the first to believe in Steve, and he knows that Steve will always do what's right.
But more important, the man. The serum amplifies everything that is inside, so good becomes great, bad becomes worse. This is why you were chosen. Because a strong man who has known power all his life may lose respect for that power, but a weak man knows the value of strength and knows compassion.
I just want to talk about Haley Atwell and Tommy Lee Jones for a second. I think that both of their characters are fun, and I really enjoyed them a lot. I love Tommy Lee Jones in whatever he's in, and I think that Peggy Carter has a lot of great scenes and moments in this movie. Enough of the characters. I want to talk about the action in this movie. There isn't a lot, actually. For a movie in the World War II setting, I was disappointed by the lack of action scenes. There are some, but I feel like it was the illusion of action. There's a lot of scenes of running, like a lot of running. Some guns are shooting, but it's not by our main character mostly. Steve sneaks into the Hydra base and runs around hiding and stuff. He'll punch a guy occasionally, but most of the action happens from the characters we don't know. A lot of people running around shooting future guns and tanks and also shooting regular guns. I don't know. Steve just walks around, looks for stuff, confronts Red Skull, talk, and then that's it. The only good action scene, in my opinion, is when Steve goes to face Red Skull. It's cool and entertaining and everyone has their own role, and then it builds up to a weak fight where the biggest enemy is the plane flinging Cap and the Red Skull around. It's just flashy, boring shooting while our main character doesn't do much in the fight. Oh well, I know it'll get better from here on out. I want to talk about a couple of things that I don't really know how to segue into. I really like Captain America promoting the war scene. I think it's really good, and the song is so goddamn catchy. I especially like it when he actually goes to Europe and tries to do the same song and dance, literally. I think that small Steve doesn't actually look too bad. I remember him being a lot worse. Not saying that he looks good all the time though, he has his moments where he does look out of place. Also, is it just me, or does Steve look like Cole Phelps in this shot? I think it was a neat detail that the town in Norway that the movie starts off in is the same town that Thor started off in. I really like the goodbye scene with Steve and Peggy. It's sad and touching and you really feel for both of them. I haven't even talked about Red Skull yet. I actually don't have much to say on him. He's a weak villain in my opinion. I like how he has a bit of a god complex though. It's better than just being evil for the sake of being evil. And I really like how they showed Steve waking up at S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. I think that's the best way to end the movie and set up for the Avengers. You know, I really like this movie. I know Captain America wasn't the most popular and it probably still isn't, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this movie. There were a lot of things that this movie just did right to me. I really enjoyed Steve in this movie. I love what he represents and the message in this movie. It doesn't matter what you are, it's who you are. It's so simple, but I really love that message. I truly believe this, so maybe that's why it means so much to me. If you haven't seen this movie in a long time, or just haven't watched it, I would strongly recommend it. I had a really good time going back to this movie. So I think that this film is going in that number 2 slot. I really enjoyed this movie, and I think it was a great start to the Captain America series. I think that some of the characters could be a little stronger, and the story is pretty by the books, but I'm a simple guy, so it works for me. This movie just did a lot right to me. Iron Man still has that number 1 spot though. But I think that the next movie will change that. I will be diving deep in that movie, so prepare for a long video. You don't want to miss it, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out, and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Captain America, and if I change your minds about anything. Next week's movie is The Avengers, so I'll see you guys then.